Go ahead and explain to the class how you did the bell ringer, please.
Yeah, I don't really know my name, we're gonna do it. So I just multiply 2 and 4. Negative 3, 9. Got that.
All right, and what did you get as your final answer?
Negative 8.
Okay, awesome. Ben, tell us, do you agree or disagree?
I didn't get that. Said disagree.
Okay. How did you use the distance formula to find the distance between 2, negative 3, and 4, 9?
I did 2 with negative 3 and 4.
So if you did 2 minus negative 3 and 4 minus 9. Okay. All right. Which method do y'all agree with?
Neither of them. Neither.
Why?
They're both wrong.
All right. So first, let's start off with what exactly is the distance formula. All right. So Colton, get ready to write this down. And someone give him what the distance formula is. John.
E equals
Square root.
Square root 4 minus 2. 4 minus 2. 4 minus 2.
In parentheses.
And square. Plus 9 minus negative 3 squared.
And now we just solve it. So what's 4 minus 2?
2.
2. Okay. So we're going to write down a 2.
Is that 2 plus? Maybe 3 in the parentheses?
It's 4 minus 2 squared. Okay, so don't forget your squared. And then we do 9 plus 3. What's 9 plus 3? 12. Okay, now we got to do our exponents. What's 2 squared?
4.
So we got 4 plus, what's 12 squared?
24.
It ain't 24.
144.
144. 12 squared means 12 times 12. 12 times 12. Now, what's 4 plus 144? And then let's help them out. What's the square root of 148?
12.2. It's like 12.16.
But it rounds to 12.2.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So D equals 12. Don't put the square root because we already used the square root. It's the square root of 148, and the square root of 148 is 12.2. If you put the square root of 12.2, that's actually going to give you like 3 point something. So just put D is approximately 12.2. You could have also had that in radical form. If you have one of the smaller calculators, it likes to give you the exact answer, which on the ACT test, it's probably going to be an exact answer. Did anyone have the exact answer, like something times the radical of something else, or did everyone use the graphing calculators?
I use the graphing calculator. You have the other calculators?
Some people have their own. All right, thank you. So you can have a seat.
Little boy Kyle. Looks very
All right, so if you type in, Kyle, type in the square root of 148 and tell me what you get.
37.
All right, so you could have gotten 2 times the square root of 37. Okay. Now, if you're working on an ACT test and you have a graphing calculator or a calculator that doesn't give you the exact number, and all of the answer choices look like this, you can type this in your calculator to find what the decimal is. All right, so that's what I need you to do now. Type in your calculator 2 times the square root of 37 and tell me what you get. What do you get?
It's like 12.16.
Yeah, so you get approximately 12.2, which is the same as your answer. So if you're taking a test and it's multiple choice, or you're on the ACT and it's multiple choice, and these are what your answers look like, and you got a decimal, go through and type these in your calculator and see which one gives you the same decimal. And then that'll be your answer. Alright, so that's for whenever you're taking like the ACT or another test that has multiple choice answers. Alright, what questions do you have for me on the bell ringer? Okay. What if I told you that you can find the distance between those 2 points without using the distance formula?
X1, no. What's the,
You found the slope.
that's
You
the
used-
slope?
Yeah, you found the slope
Oh,
between the 2
okay, I
points.
found the slope.
Okay. Alright, so instead of using distance formula, there's another method you could use. And it is the Pythagorean theorem.
Pythagorean did this in my freshman year.
I don't remember this.
Yeah, I did anchor this.
Did we get Mr.
That's great.
I don't remember.
Literally all I remember from Mr. Diggins is peace sign flags and the Falcon. But did you get your water for them? What? But you have to choose the water.
Water gun. Right on.
Water.
Alright, so Pythagorean theorem. We are not going to spend that long on Pythagorean theorem because you covered it in middle school and you probably covered it quite a bit in middle school. So we're just going to spend today going over it, discussing it, and you'll have an assignment over it tomorrow. And then starting Monday, you'll have a brand new lesson. Okay, so we're not spending very long on this at all.
What is SWVAT again?
Just a second. So, we need to make sure that we really understand Pythagorean theorem and how to use it and how to calculate it. Alright, so it says, for our goals, students will be able to use the Pythagorean theorem. And the person that came up with the Pythagorean theorem is Pythagoras. And there are some interesting facts I found out about him recently. He's known as the father of numbers, and he was born in Greece in 569 BC. He also urged his citizens to follow his reform on religious, political, and philosophical views on his goals. And he created a school, and all of his students were called Pythagoreans. And they had a rule of silence, meaning you could not talk until you had been in this school for 5 years. So you had to remain silent for 5 years. You were not allowed to contribute to the group. If you broke that rule, you could be punished by death. So if you spoke before you were 5 years, before you were in the group before 5 years, they could kill you, and it would be okay. There's been many proofs of the Pythagorean theorem. One of our former presidents, Garfield, he came up with a proof to prove the Pythagorean theorem, but there's been a lot of other proofs to show how it works. The one that there's a demonstration that you can see how it works, and it's where you have a right triangle, and you have squares on each side. Like one of them is a square that's the same side as C, one's the same side as A, same side as B, and they're filled with water. And if you turn the wheel, all of the water from C goes down into the other two, A and B, and it fills them up completely. Probably tomorrow I will show you that video to show you how exactly it works. Alright, so on your notes, first thing, the Pythagorean theorem says in a right triangle, and only in a right triangle, the square of the length of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the lengths of the legs. Now, you talked before about what a right triangle is, and which part are the legs, and which part's the hypotenuse. But just to remind you, the two sides that make the right angle, those are the legs. And the side opposite of the right angle is the hypotenuse. Okay. Now, notice it says the square, it equals the square. So they're saying if you take this side A and square it, so A squared, and add it to B squared, this side, that will equal the hypotenuse C squared. Okay, so you need to write that formula down right there where it shows you the right triangle. You need to label the legs and the hypotenuse. and you need to write the formula.
Is that legs on that side?
Yes. On the triangle, the hypotenuse is always going to be the longest side. That's because this is a 90-degree angle, and 180 minus 90 is 90. So these two would have to add up to 90. One could be 89 and one could be 1. But they have to add up to 90, so they're always going to be smaller than this 90-degree angle. So that makes our hypotenuse the biggest side. And if you remember from chapter 9, the reason we have to square these is because we can't say that A plus B equals C. Because from our last chapter, remember, if you add up 2 of the sides, it has to be bigger than the third side. So you can't just put A plus B equals C. That won't work. And that's from our previous chapter. All right. Something else that you need to write down is what exactly is a Pythagorean triple? A Pythagorean triple is a set of 3 positive integers. Notice integers, you gotta fill in the blank. A, B, and C that satisfy the equation C squared equals A squared plus B squared. All right, who can tell me, who thinks they know what an integer is? What's so special about integers? You remember that only got from middle school or algebra? Okay. Integers are whole numbers, and negative whole numbers are negative numbers. But this says positive integers, so it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's no decimals. If you ever get a radical as your answer, that means it's an irrational number. Like if you get the square root of 2 as a side, if you were to get that, it would be in a decimal form. So if you ever find the length of a side and it's a decimal, it cannot be a Pythagorean triple. Some of the most common Pythagorean triples that you're going to see are 3, 4, and 5. Because if you were to add 3 squared plus 4 squared, it would equal 5 squared. Okay. Rayleigh, what's 3 squared?
6.
9. Colton, what's 4 squared?
Hey, I know, let's go plus
16. Are you sure about that?
Well,
All right, type in 4 squared or type in 4 times 4. Yep, see? Shouldn't have second guessed yourself. Kyle, what's 5 squared?
And after I cut all my razors off,
Now,
places so I can guess myself.
what's 9 plus 16, John?
25.
25. See how they equal each other? 25 equals 25. This is one of the most common Pythagorean triples. This is like the only one that I ever remember that I have memorized for a Pythagorean triple. So you can have a right triangle with side lengths 3, 4, and 5. The reason it's a triple is because none of the sides have a decimal.
I agree now.
All right. Some other Pythagorean triples are 5, 12, and 13. Are we paying attention?
No, I can't talk.
Another Pythagorean triple are 8, 15, and 17. And 7, 24, and 25. Okay, so those are some Pythagorean triples that you could possibly have. Okay? All right. Before I do the example, what questions do you have for me? Okay. All right, it says find the value of x and tell whether the side lengths form a Pythagorean triple. First thing I would do is show which side's the hypotenuse. Well, since this is my right angle, my hypotenuse is this side here. So that would be x, so that would have to be c. And my other 2 sides are my legs. You can interchange those. Those are interchangeable. One's A and one's going to be B. So I'm going to make 5A and 12B. Okay. Then I start out with my formula. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A is 5, so I do 5 squared, plus B is 12, so I do 12 squared, equals x squared, because C is x. All right, now I just worked it out. 5 squared means 5 times 5, which is 25. 12 12 squared means 12 times 12, which is 144. And that equals x squared. Now I add 25 plus 144, and that gives me 169. Now, previously it was just x, and once you got this part, you were done. But x is not by itself, it's x squared. So that means x times x equals 169. So I have to figure out what number multiplied by itself is 169. So to do that, the opposite or the inverse of squared is square root. So you take the square root of both sides. Okay. So you would type in your calculator the square root of 169, and you should get 13. And the square root of x squared is just x. So 13 equals x. Now it says, tell whether the side lengths form a Pythagorean triple. As long as there were no decimals, I'm good. This side's 5, this side's 12, this side's 13. So yes, it is a Pythagorean triple.
No, if we just remember that it's like the specific triples, can we just write down the answer? Triple doubles.
You would have to explain to me why.
Triple doubles.
Like if I see a triangle that has the two legs are 3 and 4, I automatically know that hypotenuse is 5, just because I have that triple memorized. So if you have 5, 12, and 13 memorized, and you know that 5 and 12 are the legs, then you can go ahead and say, well, 13 is the hypotenuse because I know that 5, 12, and 13 are a Pythagorean triple. You would just have to tell me. All right, let's do one together. Find the value of x and tell whether the side lengths form a Pythagorean triple. First thing you need to do is write down the missing sides. All right, let's turn around face to front, please. So, let's turn around face to front, please. Maybe let's be facing this way. One thing I noticed while checking your notes is that some of you have not been putting the missing parts on there, and then you work it out, and then whenever you go back to look at your notes, they're not helpful because you're like, where did this even come from? So, to benefit you, you need to write down that this side is x, this side is 7, and this side is 14.
I have a question. So, like, can you pick any one that you want, like, to be A, B, and C, but C has to be the largest side?
Okay, so, first thing, you need to figure out which side is the hypotenuse. Alright, so Caden, which side would be my hypotenuse?
14 is the biggest.
How do you know it's the biggest?
I can see it's the biggest.
But these two kind of look close together, so how do I know they're not the same?
7 is slanted back, but it's the biggest.
John?
Because it's across from the 90.
Because it's across from the 90-degree angle, and 90 degrees the biggest angle, so that makes this one the biggest side, so that would have to be C. Alright, Aiden, does it matter which sides are my A and my B?
Yes. 87 and X is your A and B.
But does it matter which one's A and which one's B?
No.
So as long as you have these as A and B, you can use them interchangeably. Okay, so now I'll start with my formula. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A is 7, so we do 7 squared plus B is x, so we do x squared, and then equals 14 squared. Okay. Now we work it out. So first you need to figure out what is 7 squared. Ivy, what's 7 squared?
49.
So 49 plus x squared equals, Gabby, what's 14 squared?
196.
Now this one's different. Oh, the 49's over here with the x squared. How do I get rid of that, Ben? Yeah, you would subtract it over to the other side. So 49 minus 49 cancels, so I have x squared equals, what's 196 minus 49?
147.
147, do y'all agree with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now take the square root. Andrew, what's the square root of 147?
12.1.
Okay, so x equals 12.1. and I'm counting on y'all to make sure that that answer is correct.
That is correct.
Is this a Pythagorean triple?
Yes.
Why not?
It's not all whole numbers.
Decimal.
Yeah, they all have to be whole numbers. So the answer would be no, because that one's a decimal, and you cannot have a decimal. If it's a decimal, or if it's like 12.007 and you round it to 12, that's still not a Pythagorean triple because it is actually a decimal. If you have to round it, it is not a Pythagorean triple.
I do believe your statement is incorrect. It said equal to, and that was not equal to. It's approximate.
All right, you need to fill these numbers in. I know they're kind of hard to see. These two, the heights are 47.57 meters.
Wait, why did I? Oh, I.
And then each of these sides are 23.26 meters, each of these. And then they're wanting us to find the length of the support beams, X.
Can you read those numbers again?
47.57 meters is the height. 23.26, that's the sides over here on each one. And then they're wanting us to find the length of the support beam. Okay. Now, what do you notice about the two triangles?
They're congruent.
They're congruent, so you can do either one. You can look at either one. So let's look at this one over here. So to find the support beam, you're going to have to figure out first which side is the hypotenuse. Kyle, which side would be considered the hypotenuse?
The top.
This one right here? Okay, does everybody agree with that?
No,
Why not?
because it's not the biggest side.
It's not the biggest side. The hypotenuse is across from 90, so that would be this side here, which is X. So this side here would have to be your C.
Why can't it be the other side?
Now, these two you can make either or. I'm going to make this A and this one B. For some reason, I always make my A the smallest side. I don't know why, but I do it.
I'm crazy. I love to do that.
Make mine the hugest side.
A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A is 23.26.
What's the square on this? You know?
Squirrel?
X squared. It says X squared.
in the thousands.
Alright, thank you.
Plus 47.57 squared equals X squared. Now, a good rule of thumb to know what to round to, whatever they have their decimal to, which is 2, the hundredths, that's what you want to round to, is the hundredths. You can decide whether or not you want to round at the beginning, here.
Is it
So-
saying that whole top length is 23?
No, each one, it's saying each one is 23. Okay, so what is 23 and 26 hundredths squared?
540.
Round it to 2 decimal places.
0. 541.003.
Plus, what is 47.57 squared?
2,262.90. Actually, that's what it'd be.
0.9990.
No, it's 0.90.
0.9,
Yes, the
0.90.
number is 4. 5 or more up the score.
0.90.
Okay, now we add those together. So add together 531.03 plus 2,262.90 and tell me what you get.
2,803.93.
Someone can have to redo that to get it right.
Is that
That's right. Okay, thanks, Brad.
now take the square root. What is the square root? And notice it says approximate the length. So let's do it to the nearest whole number. So take the square root of 2,803.93 and round it to the nearest whole number.
What did you do for?
It'd be 52 point. Hold on. No,
Oh, it wouldn't.
yeah, if you round 2803 to 2804, and then you.
Oh, round it afterwards.
It'd be 53.
Do 2,803.93, the square root of that, and
It'll
then
be 53.
that rounds to 53.
It's 52.952.
You're trying to find the square root of the freaking 283 3.93?
Yes, and you get 52.95.
So you just check his
So
math.
that rounds to approximately 53.
Yes.
So this is approximately 53 feet. But notice, if you rounded here and got 2,804, what did you get when you do square root of 2,804?
78620
52.95? Okay, so it runs to 53 also? Okay.
Let me do the math.
Now, also, whenever it says approximate, it really depends where you round at. So your answer could be a little off from 53. You could be like 52 or 54, depending on when you rounded. Like here, you could have rounded to 541 plus 2263. Okay, because it says approximate. So sometimes your answer may not be exactly the same as someone else's. All right, before you get with your partner and do the work with your partner, what questions do you have for me?
Who's our partner, John?
Hang on, I'm about to tell you. Before you get with your partner, what questions do you have for me about using Pythagorean theorem? Okay, your partner. Andrew, I'm gonna need you to just turn your chair around, and you and Aiden will be partners working at the same table. Ben, you will turn your chair around, and you and Kaden will be partners working at the same table. Braxton, turn your seat around. You and John will be partners working at the same. Ivy's turn yours around. And then Rayleigh, can I get you to come sit in this chair, and you and Colton will turn around and work with Kyle.
Dude, who writes their name? That kid.
Oh,
Read it.
said.
Read it.
Alright, let's go ahead and have a seat and get started.
You read it.
Before you work it out, you need to write the missing sides down. They are x, 4, and 6. And then state whether it's a Pythagorean triple. Alright, if I can have your attention, please. I believe on this one you should have gotten approximately 7.2 for x. And so that would not be a Pythagorean triple because not all the sides are integers. Alright, here's your next one. Make sure you fill in the missing sides.
Yes.
Wait just a second.
Is that 16.2? Or is that 7?
Get your boy, Kate.
What are you
Hopping
doing?
into.
Oh,
Hey, this
never
minute.
mind. This is.
Alright, it says, an anemometer is a device used to measure wind speed. The anemometer shown is attached to the top of a pole. Support wires are attached to the pole 5 feet above the ground, and each wire is 6 feet long. So first you need to fill in those two missing numbers from the directions. Then it says how far from the base of the pole is each wire attached to the ground. So they gave you the height from the ground to the top of the wire, which is 5 feet, and they gave you the wire, which is 6 feet. You've got to find the distance from the pole to where the wire touches the ground, feet. So they got to know how far out they need to attach the wire to the ground.
Read it again.
Have your attention, please. For this one, for D, the distance from the pole to where the wire is stuck in the ground, you should have gotten 3.3 feet.
Get it.
All right, before, also, don't forget your unit of measure, 3.3 feet.
Feet.
The other one was meters. The beam, the support beam, I should have put meters on that. All right, go ahead, go back to your original seat.
Homework question.
Bubba.
We got homework, huh?
I know, it's in the practice.
I
All right, so what you need to do first before you work these out is fill in the missing side links. This one here, you got 7, 11, and x. This one here, you got x, 8, and 17. And then on the fire escape, you got x for the height, 8.9 feet for the base, and 16.7 feet for the ladder. And they're wanting to know how much space is between one fire escape to the next fire escape. Alright, so you're gonna work these out, and then I will be coming by to check them.